Today we are talking with Maximilian Abouleish, who is a Sustainable Development Manager at Sekem, an integral organization based in Egypt, which is a true role model for sustainable development. Sekem was founded by Dr. Ibrahim Abouleish, and this organization has for more than 40 years promoted a holistic and integral approach to economic, cultural, and ecological development. And now I'm going to leave the stage to Mr. Abouleish.
Yes, hello everybody. This is Maximilian, and I came 10 years ago to Egypt, and I joined Sekem. And Sekem was a place that I didn't plan to end up, but it was really a gut decision when I wondered about my career in Europe. And I really felt in my gut that I need to explore the world. I need to go somewhere out of my comfort zone. And luckily, and by destiny maybe, I ended up at Sekem. And in the 2010, 11, 12, 13 years, there was huge societal transformations going on here in Egypt, the Egyptian revolution. And I had quickly the feeling that I'm at the right place where I can contribute towards societal transformation via a community that is kind of a social innovation because it's combining different spheres of life. And for me, it was a choice by heart to become part of the family and part of the community, and really, feeling that I arrived somewhere where I want to go more in depth, a kind of personal transformation and also an organizational transformation or community transformation, as I found out on my way. I met Alexander Schiefer and Ronnie Lessem in the earlier years of my time there, even in 2011. And I realized that what they offered as a kind of PhD program was right for me to understand more in depth the transformation rhythm and the different fields that need to be integrated in order to see a transformation happening. So I engaged in this program, and it was for me really a nice and very important process in my life to become more aware of why am I here, what is my role, and I see myself as a bridge builder between generations, as a bridge builder that integrates what wants to come and emerge into what is already there, and a bridge builder between cultures, because I come from Germany and I'm living here in an Islamic Egyptian culture. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that both worlds have their gifts to offer, and of course also their shadows. And I also, I'm bridging different generations. On the one hand, I can connect to the pioneering generation who built up Sekem here. And on the other hand, I'm really also understanding the language and the needs from the new generation that comes here and wants to have an impact and realize themselves as well. And hence, I see myself as a catalyst holding space for the new and bringing elements of organizational development in that I find very relevant. And one of these relevant issues is for me, for example, that we are starting to listen to our feelings and not only let ourselves be judged by the mind. By the mind taking decisions can quickly end up in where we are at the world. We are facing an enormous crisis driven by an individualism, driven by the quest for knowledge, driven by innovation, technological innovations that are detached from something that is in the end causing an unease at our feeling level, because we have a kind of feeling that something is going wrong in the world. And I think currently in the crisis of Corona and where the world is at a kind of a standstill or lockdown, the universe wants to tell us something. It wants to tell us, hey guys, and let us wait and reflect on where the journey goes. And I can't help but also apply a mystical perspective on that story that is unfolding here, the story that we have to kind of question the values we are basing our systems on the kind of patriarchal structures that have been very successful and very strong, creating the world where we are, but also have a huge shadow sides. And I'm really feeling the longing for integrating this with the feminine values, with more with the integration of feelings. And feelings can help us to also go into our shadows, because that's often related to fears. And I think it's an essential part of my journey to confront fears and to confront shadows, and to start looking at them and trying to integrate them and become a more whole human being, because only then I can engage in nourishing relationships. Otherwise, my relationships are always driven by kind of a win-lose dynamic. And I see this in my organizational environment, not only at Sekem, I see it all over the world, this kind of quest of trying to be the rescuer or the savior of the world, or being a victim. And these dynamics are unhealthy for evolution. These dynamics are not built on a responsibility for your own situation and on a voice of what you need, and also a voice of what you think a community organization needs. So I'm really all for opening up and looking closer to your own shadow in order to heal them and bring forward healthy relationship and dynamics, because that is the foundation on which we can build new communities or healthy communities. And that's the fabric out of which we need to rebuild societies. I don't believe in a top-down process. I believe on a healthy kind of redesign of the very fabric where we are. And that often starts at a place that we call home. So I myself feel that home for humanity is the right place to start, and to connect us all, and to create a common understanding, a common language, a common worldview that with all its varieties has the same intention. And we have to be explicit about that intention, about that purpose that we are all serving. And I think for the rest of my life, I will kind of practice myself of how to best work together with others in a kind of social arena, and learn and grow and overcome barriers. Because there's always a way, there's always a way. There's never a kind of blockage where when we cannot move ahead. It's about deciding that we want to go this together, and learning how to integrate the strength of all the individuals, and have the community provide a space for these strengths, but also for the weaknesses, so we can really have a human encounter there. Because what else is life for, you know? All the economic things that we create, they are a kind of means to the end. It's just a tool to generate value for developing humans, for developing consciousness, because that's what the universe wants. We are on a journey as humankind. So I'm really happy to have found a place where I can practice that, where I can see the whole mirrored in the one. And I think the best thing what we can have is just a little bit of patience and endurance to go this road together. So thank you very much for that introductory time and space, and for listening. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, that was really inspiring, and that was amazing. Thank you very much. So I think the first question, the first thing I would like to rebound on is the notion of shadow. This concept, it's crucial in order to become more whole as human beings, but also to adopt a more integral view of the world and of the relationship. And so my question is, which piece of advice could you give to us, to Stephanie and I, but also to all our future listeners, how to acknowledge our feelings, how to confront these shadows, how to go through this tunnel and go back at the end stronger than we were?
I would say, first of all, we should have an agreement upon a belief that is that in every shadow there's a gift. In every shadow as a shadow is a certain quality that has a kind of low resonance, and that is built on fear. And if I go into that fear and I confront that fear, uh, I can accept this shadow. I can even embrace it, and by embracing it, it doesn't become so ugly anymore. And eventually, I find that inside the shadow there's a gift. So, for example, the shadow of force, of enforcing something on others, has a gift of strength. If it comes at the right time, at the right place, it can turn into strength. Or, I don't know, something that is kind of conflict. Conflict can turn into a diplomatic gift of understanding when to give what comments and so on. So I want really to give you that kind of insight that it's really a treasure to go into that shadows, and to not be afraid, but rather to be vulnerable, because out of that suddenly a human quality emerges, and a space, a safe space emerges where we can deal with feelings in a new way. So fears can make us very creative. Huh? Fears do not have only make us, unrational or so. Fears can make us very creative, and anger can make us very clear. If I'm angry, that's not bad. Just tell me why you are angry, why you're feeling this anger, and we can kind of use it to draw boundaries of what is okay and what is not okay, and that we need in order to work together. And if you are really sad, then please say so, and we need to integrate that. We need to hold space for your sadness, because there are things we cannot change. And if you suppress that, that becomes the next shadow. And if you are happy about something, then celebrate it, take ownership for it, and show us where to go, because probably that's the area where you can lead. And I would like to invite organizational spaces to share feelings more often, and communities to share feelings more often. And there's always a kind of notion of, yeah, maybe it's not as productive, or maybe that's something we keep aside. But in the end, when we look at from an integral perspective, and also from the perspective of a kind of new phase of the organization, where people are seen as a whole being and not only as a salary taker or productive entity, then we need to acknowledge that a human being has feelings, and we just need to learn to maneuver it, because it's important data. It's important data for taking decisions. And the mind shouldn't take decisions. The mind should help you to understand things, to be creative, to be playful, but don't take decisions with your mind. It sounds really complex, yeah? But the real kind of decisions are already taken on your heart level if you are really listening to it.
Oh, thank you very much. I think that everything you just said is more relevant than ever, especially in this COVID crisis. Many people are confined on home, and they maybe have nothing else to do than confront their shadows. They have no way to escape them. So facing their maybe this COVID crisis is an opportunity for people to face their shadow. Let's hope that they come out stronger on the other side. Awesome. Yeah. And now for the next question, I would like to go back a bit in time to the time you arrived in Egypt. So Sekem is located in the desert, and we can say that a big part of Egypt is in the desert, actually. In this desert, we could say that it's nature at its harshest. It's not so welcoming to all forms of life. And so my question is, how did you make this not so welcoming place your home? And how did you feel the first time you were in face of the immensity of the desert, of this huge place and this really harsh nature?
Well, when I arrived at Sekem, there were already some maybe 34 years gone. So I didn't arrive at the situation where Dr. Ibrahim Abouleish and his family arrived. I arrived already at a place that was very fertile ground. and that has already surpassed a pioneering phase. But I can tell you something about the desert, because I went 1 year to a desert farm of ours at Minya, and we recently also have a very nice dynamic on another desert farm called Wahareya Desert Farm, where we kind of try to replicate the community building efforts and bring a more holistic development impulse to the desert, where everything needs to start with agriculture and environmental development. Because, as you have said, the desert is a hostile place. So the first thing you have to do is to build a fertile ground, literally a fertile ground with a lot of compost. A lot of compost and some infrastructure in order to grow biodiversity and grow, let's say, raw materials of agricultural outcomes that give you the basis for value creation. And of course, it's a mandate to work with nature and with the cosmic forces. You cannot start that vision based on a kind of conventional chemical dependent model of agricultural production. You have to work with nature in order to build the substance that allows you more and more to increase organic matter, more and more increase the soil quality. So the abundance kind of can come and is invited. And once this is the case, which usually can take up to 10 years, then you can invite a social dynamic to kick in with people that do not come only to work there and be with an agricultural focus, but you should also invite people who come there for art and human development and providing a kind of health basis and education, etc., etc., and work as well on your governance models of how to take decisions. So the funny thing is when the social elements kick in and you kind of take the more holistic development approach and build a community there, then the image of reclaiming desert is kind of reborn, because now in a social realm, you want to reclaim relationships. You want to make them fertile. You want to make them healthy and organic. And you don't want to put chemicals and find quick fixes and I don't know what. You want to really nourish the souls that are there. So the image of organic agriculture is really an image for me that is also holding true in terms of the social fabric that we are building. And it takes time to build that. But there's a huge inspirational power if you go to the desert and you kind of see the land that is still bare, and then after one season you see that there's a green kind of coming up, and you kind of feel very enthusiastic, at least me as an idealist and someone who loves, somehow the pioneering spirit and to start something. I love to be driven by the potential of what could be there. A desert is a situation and a farm and a community where nothing else is yet there. So you are free to create it according to what you think is right. And you're not stuck in a kind of institutional setup that is already so over mature and so, also, how you say, stagnant, but rather an invitation to create the new, even though that comes with its challenges, as you can imagine. But I would rather prefer this kind of challenge of inviting the new and doing things according to the values that I stand for. So that was kind of the invitation that I saw, and that keeps me motivated, as an enthusiast, as an idealist, as someone who really likes to create out of nothing.
Thank you very much. I especially like the metaphor you used, that relationship must be made as fertile as the ground and you have to nourish them. And I think that's more true than ever in these trying times we're going through. And at some point, you also talked about reclaiming the desert, which is perfect because like you already made my job easier for my second question, which is, could you talk more about the main challenges faced by the Greening the Desert project? Because when I read about it, I would say I was like, wow, that ambitious. Greening the desert is such a huge project, and as you said, the desert, everything is possible. There's nothing there. The limit, the sky is the limit. The imagination is your limit. So please tell us more about the challenges you faced about greening the desert. And I'm sure you must have faced thousands, hundreds.
Yeah, I can mention some. Well, one thing is that you have to acknowledge that there are entrepreneurial priorities to take care of. You know, someone coming there and says, "Oh, I want to make a kind of nice vegetable garden for us here," and that's it. You have to realize that's cost. You know, probably the tomato will cost you like 10 euros per kilo or so, because there is there's a lot of costs that are in today's world that you need to cover in order to do so. You know, irrigation, the whole economic business model behind requires a lot of investment and a lot of operational costs to cover. So there's a lot of essential needs to be covered, and there's not big room to you know start with everything from an idealistic edge, but rather from what is the need. I need to come here to take a responsibility, and then out of that kind of direct need to fill, there comes the community aspect. There comes the other things. But from our perspective and our experience, you cannot come together and say, yo, we want to have a community and let's be together here and let's live out of nothing. No, it's the other way around. You come there, you do your job, and then hopefully a community life is starting to kick in. And for people coming from Europe or from the younger generation from Egypt, that's, and myself as well, that's something to understand, that we have to acknowledge that there's, you know, a kind of economic pressure and scale that is needed for the foundation to make a miracle happen. The other thing is that you have to deal with a huge, vast array of consciousness. People coming from the rural areas with almost no educational backgrounds, meeting other people there that come from Europe or are professors at a university or engineers or managers. They are all meeting there together. We have so many different value systems. People are different in their expectations and how they, you know, value things and how they get motivated. And it's absolutely necessary to acknowledge, first of all, that there are differences. And not everyone can feel the same and needs the same in order to thrive and in order to align people. There has to be a concert of different actions, different ways of approaching people, and that is how we deal with different consciousness levels. It's not that one is better than the other, it's just that we need different approaches, different things that that we need to in terms of communication, in terms of you know, someone is doing things because he wants to show loyalty. It's like a family bond there. Someone is doing things because he can gain material wealth out of it and does it for his own profit, or her. And someone is there because he or she believes in the vision. He doesn't need a lot of money. He's just there to kind of serve something larger, but certainly not to be, you know, bossed around by a single person. So all these different things need to be put together, and that's really a challenge. And the last challenge on the environmental side here in Egypt, particular, we are facing water scarcity. And water scarcity is a tricky thing because if you don't engage there, others will engage. So it's not that it's like a situation where not reclaiming desert land would make any difference. But we want to show how to sustainably cope with water. What if it's an endless resource? What if we're tapping into fossil water sources? Should we still not do it, or should we do it? And in the end, we decided to do it because it's a trade-off. Sustainable development means a trade-off. You can never be perfect in every regard. You have to set priorities, and you have to do things at one day, and on the other day, it can completely shift, and it's a different priority. And concerning the kind of ecosystem restoration approach, the aim is to build biomass and to kind of influence temperature differentials between day and night, and between the air and the ground, and to kind of make the hydrological cycles work again in our favor, so we increase the humidity. And eventually, if we do it on a large scale at certain points in the world, such as acupunctural areas in the world where desert reclamation could change even weather patterns, if you do it large enough, then we can shift the whole story and actually have a positive impact on the climate situation.
Wow, thank you very much. So if I understand well, to realize the impossible, you have to acknowledge the reality and all the complexity of nature and of human fabric. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I
And
think...
never let yourself be...
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say, always be ready to engage in a mission impossible. That's something we really have as our credo. Everything seems impossible, but something that seems possible is already too much normal. So we don't need the normal, we need the impossible. So just engage with it, and if you really realize that where you put your consciousness, that will flourish, and put your consciousness into a mission impossible, and it will flourish. So don't let yourself be drawn back by, skepticism also. Just go for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I definitely think that now more than ever, this is the type of thinking we need to adopt worldwide. And I can see Stephanie, I'm sure she's boiling with questions, so I'm gonna let her jump in.
I am. It's so interesting, and I could rebound on so many aspects. And I would like to talk about more about this pioneering thinking, but also thinking of the impossible in the context of why we actually got together. Also, the COVID-19 crisis, and how would you see the post-corona time? How do you think there is this possibility of unity and cohesion in the world? Because for me, that's something that also seems almost impossible, at least pre-corona times. What is your thought on that? Do you think what could come out of this?
Maybe it's a good accelerator for a lot of visions that we have. Probably what we dreamed of achieving in 50 years, we may achieve in 30 years, because people are much more ready to listen, and are also now seeing the consequences of what happens if the world is at a standstill. It's amazing. So I just hope that out of that comes the courage to change things. The problem is that those people in power, they have no interest in changing things, because that would mean they would get out of power. So it's really up to us to change things, and we can only start where we have an influence. Start with your own self, start with your relationships, start with how you consume, and start of designing your career differently. And I think that's about it. Because if it's not accompanied by the shift of consciousness, nothing will really be of longer stay. I know this from the Egyptian revolution. There was such a momentum and such a hope and enthusiasm, but in the end we didn't manage to change institutions because people didn't change their behaviors. And so we need to just have a long endurance in order to see that change needs time, and change needs everyone to start with his or her own environment. So I don't estimate a kind of crazy breakthrough, but I think that it shifts a lot of people's mind, and to change the institutions and the systems we are living in, we need another another good decade, I would say.
Yes, thank you. Totally need some bottom-up approaches. We can see that already now, I think, for different policy approaches. But also, and we have to start with ourselves and with our home. Bringing it back to that notion, you already mentioned it once before, but could you maybe elaborate more on that? What is your definition of home? And did that change maybe when you said you're from Germany initially? Did that change from when you first left in Germany to Egypt? Now in Egypt, yeah.
Well, my notion of home, of course, changed physically because I call Sekem my home, and it's a place where I feel safe and where I have strong relationships, family, and still, if I go back to Germany, I feel also familiar, and I have a place called home there as well. The notion for me is that a home is not something physical. For me, a home is rather a place where I can strive, where I can live, where I can develop, where I can have an impact. And it's something like a community, I would say, that goes hand in hand with the feeling of being home. I really would love to integrate that in my life from what I experienced so far, that home is part of a community. It's not only a kind of apartment or place where I live with some people. No, it's just a home is for me a larger social concept.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good insight. I will give it back to Ludo at this point.
Yeah, before we again come back to the notion of home, I have one last question, last but not least, of a concept which I know is very important in Sekem, and it's about the economy of love. So my question is very simple, could you expand a bit on this notion of economy of love, and especially how it relates to nature and to human relationships?
Yes, economy of love means a change of the paradigm of how we create value in the economic realm. It's about giving enough clarity and transparency to the consumer on what impact does the product have on the social, also meaning on the relationship sphere, on the cultural sphere, and on the environment. So the problem that we see in the world is that people necessarily are evil people, but they just do not have in mind or in their consciousness the effect and the impact of this buying decision, because otherwise they probably maybe wouldn't do it. And true cost accounting has a lot to do with that, because we want to show the true costs of producing that product on the environmental, social, and cultural realm. So we want to create enough transparency to empower a consumer and someone to take the right decision. That's basically it. It has been born out of a crisis also that I can tell you is happening in Egypt very strongly. Egypt is living and doing agriculture only on 6% out of the area. So it's a huge pressure on this little amount of area that we have around the Nile and the Delta. And the environmental pollution is crazy. So in the end, we have more pressure on farms that are working organically with polluted groundwater, with polluted air, and so on. And on the other hand, we have a kind of lab industry and organic standards that are becoming more and more strict, more and more defensive and protective. And the consumer does not really understand what does 3 parts per million mean. You know, if I draw a million dots on the wall and only 3 of them are residuals from environmental pollution, then the product doesn't have an organic certificate anymore and cannot be sold organically, which is a disaster for any farmer, because the farmer did all his best to cultivate it according to the organic and biodynamic standards, but the environmental pollution through the groundwater or through the water from the Nile and through the air is just leaving the traces of chemicals there that do not allow him to get the certificate. So what do? You know, like throw this produce away and say, sorry guy, you didn't get the certificate. That's a disaster socially for this farmer, and also on the societal range, it's a systemic impact that we are just seeing. We're just getting the kind of bill out of our behavior from the past 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, I don't know. So we thought it's important to stress organic and biodynamic and all that, but it's also important to show integrity to our value chain. And if we create a standard that we let an external third party to be, you know, to certify that, but a standard that we believe is true from the process, then we can say, look, even if the farmer doesn't get his produce certified, we still believe he did a good job. We are still in integrity to the social values and the environmental values, and we are not letting him carry the risk of societal, you know, challenges like environmental pollution. So it's a way from us to respond to this kind of crazy situation that even if you grow organically, you don't get an organic product anymore because of the systemic impacts, and to let the buyer decide what he wants, you know, because that's the important thing. If the buyer understands that his choice has an impact, a positive impact on the society and on the culture and on the environment, then he can take his own decision and judge if he wants to go along with our products or not. So that's for us the economy of love. On a rather technical level, but of course it's a kind of philosophy behind and a kind of value behind.
Yeah, thank you. I think this notion is extremely relevant for everyone, and I hope it will awaken the curiosity of our listeners. So before I said it was going to be the last question, but I lied. There's another one that I really want to ask. And so you told us you came through, sorry, you're from Germany and then come to Egypt and arrived at Sekem. And so agriculture is a huge part of the work done at Sekem. And so my question is, how did your relationship to the land change when you arrive at Sekem? Because I guess, you know, in Western Europe, we do not have such a strong connection to the land. Like, I don't know lots of people in my network who actually cultivate vegetables and fruits. And so how did your relationship to the land change when you arrived at Sekem?
Well, first of all, I just discovered what does it mean, sustainable development? What does it mean to live in a community? I didn't have a clue about that. And so I could live it and slowly but surely understand it from my mind, but then also feel it and then also do it, because I go out with my kids and we get the salad out of the garden from the kitchen here, from the cafeteria, and we can visit a field and collect and collect fresh produce. That is an amazing gift, and we can now, you know, in times of Corona, we can come up with an environmental learning space for children on the farm, and we are not, you know, forced to keep our kids at home and only be reduced to online learning. No, we are in a community. We can move freely. We can live freely. We can experience nature by walking through the fields and through the forest in the morning or in the evening, and we can, you know, do that side by side of working in an industrial context, of producing things and educating people and having a healthcare center. And so for me, this proximity is very important, and the design of how you create a living space, how to combine living and working together. And for me, I don't want to change that back into a kind of concept where I work and then I live, and there's a boundary between. And for me, that's not usual. What is normal is when it's integrated, and it helped me a lot, you know, because I'm not a farmer from my background, but it helped me a lot to just dive into that and go on a desert farm for 1 year. And I think for everyone who comes to Sekem and who wants to take responsibility and leadership for the vision that we have together, he or she should stay for a reasonable period of time, maybe a year or so, on a desert farm and just experience it there, and to learn also the daily struggles, and to, on the other hand, also connect to the nature and to the stillness and to the, you know, different energy around there, that makes you feel more human in the end, because you can experience it. It's not a concrete jungle. It's something where actually you can feel nature and its energy.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. So before we conclude, we have one last request. Could you maybe show us an object which for you really symbolizes home? Like an object, when you see it, you like, that object, I need it in my home. It's really dear to me.
Well, I brought something that is dear to my heart. It's a microphone. It's a microphone that stands for creativity, because you can express yourself, you can make music with it, and I think creativity and music is very important. I neglected it far too long, so it's like also an appel to myself of, you know, never losing that root and always being in touch with it. And the other thing, it's about speaking the truth. You know, you have to. It's like stage, going on stage. You are afraid of it. Everyone is looking, and then you still have the power to just speak, because it's not about you anymore. It's about that you speak out something that you feel that is needed to be said, and that maybe an organization or a society or nature cannot articulate. And you, as a human being, you have a tongue, you can speak, you can express things, but it is not necessarily what you came up with. It's something that you feel. So, you know, take a chance and courage and speak the truth.